Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Love Letters from Greece.
Love Letters
to Greece. Oh my goodness. I don't believe I messed that one up.
Then we'll be doing this at 6 in the morning from Greece.
It's very possible that Greece could be sending us love letters
True.
too. I hope they do after we do this show. It's always nice to get love letters from Greece.
I'm going to share it on my own wall, this
live
feed. Θα κάνουμε share, θα το μοιράσουμε στον τοίχο μας.
I got to learn how to do the say. Otherwise, all I could do is say.
You can say Facebook.
Το Facebook.
Το βιβλίο των μούρων.
Yeah.
I think I shared it, so we can start.
So you shared it. Okay, great.
Oh, you can't?
No, I can't because it's my phone that we're using to film this on.
All right, well, welcome back to another show. We're glad to be here again with you since last week's Hagia Sophia episode and the tragedy that is still unfolding.
Yeah, this Friday, for everybody who probably already knows this, there's a day of mourning declared by the Greek Archdiocese
of America
and other Christian denominations. The Catholic Church, I believe, has joined in with that.
Yeah,
the Armenian Church as well. So it's a very it's a very sad event for all of us Orthodox, and not just for Orthodox, obviously. We talked about it last time in detail, and obviously this is a very upsetting situation. And there's few things more upsetting than situations where you feel kind of a lack of control over it. Where somebody like Erdogan just comes in there and just says, "Okay, this is what we're doing. Too bad. You don't like it. Too bad. You're not going to go to war over this with us. So you're going to have to take it." And that's very offensive. You kind of feel, I think, like you're tied into a chair and you have someone mocking you and just you can't do anything to react. Well, it's difficult to do things to react. We're not saying that you can't do anything. I think there's things you can do. And
yes.
We discussed that last time during our webcast. But
just for those of you that don't know what is happening, just very briefly, in the 6th century, Hagia Sophia was built in Constantinople, what was the Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire, the Greek Empire.
A Holy Wisdom Cathedral.
The wisdom of Holy Wisdom, not Saint Sophia.
Not Saint Sophia, yes.
And it was one of the greatest cathedrals of all of Christianity, one of the largest and most beautiful, aesthetically scientific, structures ever built for close to 1,500 years. And when it was taken over by the Ottoman Turks, it became a mosque in 1453 by Mehmed the Conqueror. It was desecrated, looted, and then converted into a mosque eventually a few years later. And then when the modern nation of Turkey came about with Mustafa Kemal Atatürk in 1923, yeah, by 1935 they made it into a museum. And it has been that way since, and then it became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in the 80s. So it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It became a museum just to keep it open to everybody and to make it accessible to everybody in the world. And this prime minister, this fascist dictator of Turkey, Islamist, has now made it into a mosque again, reconverted it. And tomorrow is going to be the official opening. And from our churches here, I'll read you quickly from the Greek Archdiocese of America. This is from St. Nicholas Greek Orthodox Shrine in Flushing. That's my church. And we also got another message from St. Constantine and Helen in Nyack and many others. They're going to have, following tomorrow's Divine Liturgy, we will be chanting the Akathist hymn to the Most Holy Theotokos. Tomorrow is a day of mourning for the Orthodox world as the great Church of Christ, Hagia Sophia, will officially be used as a mosque. Please join us in prayer to the Mother of God. Orthros at 7:30 a.m., liturgy at 8:30 a.m., and the Akathist hymn at 10 a.m. This is for St. Nicholas in Flushing, and I'm sure it applies to all the churches. Follow your church's calendar and try to follow it online or go to church. And it's going to be a very sad day tomorrow.
Yeah, well, it's very difficult because when you're dealing with somebody like Erdogan, there is that sense of helplessness that comes about. It's very difficult, and he knows it. It's like a bad guy who knows that he's got you, and he continues to press on you. And what he's always trying to do is push the envelope. And I think that when it comes to Cyprus, he's doing that as well. And that's the subject of our discussion today. A few days ago, we had the 46th anniversary since the Turkish invasion of Cyprus. I'm sure pretty much all of you who are watching this know where Cyprus is and why this is an important issue. The Turks currently still continue to occupy 37% of the island. I was actually in Cyprus last year. I got to see the occupied territory. I got to see, obviously, I was in the free area, and this is kind of this has been going on.
Continue.
This has been going on for for 46 years, as you all know. There was a little bit of hope that there would be some kind of progress when the whole European Union expansion project was going on in 2003. There was hope that the so-called Annan Plan by the then Secretary General of the UN, Kofi Annan, would provide some kind of incentive for the occupied part to kind of, fold in. But honestly, for all of those of you who are familiar with the Annan Plan, I had seen it myself. It did not look like a very pro-Greek plan, putting it mildly. I would never even call something like that as something in the middle. It seemed to me like pretty much, giving the Turks probably even more sway than they had initially when the Republic of Cyprus was formed in 1960, I believe, when it became independent from being a Greek colony. So, again, just, as a Russian, I know a bit about Cyprus because many Russians vacation in Cyprus. It's a very popular tourist destination there. It's, it's a fairly easy destination for a lot of Russians, and they love going there. And this year, unfortunately, because of the coronavirus, they're not able to go. But essentially, it's a pretty well-known area and vacation spot, and a beautiful heritage site. A lot of Orthodox churches there. And of course, those of you who know, in the occupied part, the Orthodox churches are pretty much most of them. There is maybe just a handful, from what I know, where there are actually some services being conducted by the Church of Cyprus. But essentially, that is all. Although those churches are, closed and looted, robbed, etc. So, just kind of recapping history here, right? We know what happened.
I want to share a quick map, but I can't find it handy.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So, why don't you show some of the stuff we have here? And this is
all right, so this
Billy will explain what he's showing
from
here.
my own archives. So in the summer of '74 is when Cyprus was initially invaded. Right, we're celebrating the commemorating now the anniversary of that.
They're celebrating, of course, but whatever.
They're always celebrating.
I don't think they're really honestly celebrating too much because having been to the occupied part, it's like a third world country there almost. It's a very when you go there, the infrastructure is much weaker. The reason why tourists tend to go there is because it's cheap, And yes, you're allowed to cross now. There's the green line, so to speak. That's all allowed now. And they accept everybody except for Armenia needs a visa. Interestingly enough, and one more country needs a visa. I forgot which one, but they actually they have issues with Armenia, so they won't let them in. But basically, it's a Turkish-run state, even though they say that they're independent. And it's been that
it's not true.
It's not a very you sense a pretty significant difference when you cross over the buffer zone. There's cheap counterfeit goods being sold everywhere. It's a different environment. So anyway, bottom line is that things have been kind of there are several Greek issues. Billy and I were just talking about this. There's the issue with Macedonia. There's the issue of Northern Epirus, which by the way gets very little airtime, I would say, relatively to the other issues. And then there's the issue of Cyprus. And when in the 90s, this was Cyprus was kind of in the news because we had the murder of two Greek Cypriots when there was a protest by the Green Line. Yeah, and you actually, I remember the Greek organization you were a part of gave.
So we had a Greek organization, the Hellenic Front, that was with Serbians and Armenians, and we actually honored the spouses of the fallen in the Greek parade in '94. We gave them wreaths, we saluted them, we honored them, and we walked with them. In 1994, I'll never forget that. That was right after. It's a few years later, but it was something important for us. Wait, 94? It was 94?
94, so that's a 20-year anniversary, actually, of the invasion. Right.
Wow. Yeah.
So Operation Attila, we all know. Basically, obviously, things were already looking bad in the 60s. We know that. There was a lot of intercommunal violence that went on. So anyway, why don't you show what you got
Operation Attila, that's exactly the code name for the invasion of Cyprus. And that's what the Turks and the Turkish government, secular, non-secular, Ottoman, whatever you want to call it.
Any flavor of the ice cream you want to call it.
They worship Attila the Hun.
Yeah.
He's their ancestor. They're all related peoples. Genghis Khan is a cousin. The Mongols, but the original Turks came from the Central Asian steppes.
Right.
And the Huns were their ancestors. And why Operation Attila
There he is. He's got the Cyprus. You see, he's got Cyprus on his chest over
So this
there.
is a magazine that was published in 1975 in December.
I think, unfortunately, the text is backwards there because...
Yeah, it's all tachydromos.
Yeah.
The mail carrier will be translated. It was a very big magazine back in the day in Greece, tachydromos, and this was the cover of Attila. See, he's holding Cyprus on his chain.
There's get it up a little bit so we can see a little bit more of the bottom
we
there.
will. It says Attilas and the sword and blood, and then what is that? Elada Turkia eos pou, Greece and Turkey until when? And he's stepping on the cross.
That's really powerful.
Imagine
imagery, yeah.
this getting published these days, right?
Yeah, right.
But this was right after the event. This is what was happening in Greece, and this is Operation Attila of the Turks. All right, airplanes in the background, fire, smoke, and if you want to see the back of the magazine, you can buy your Astor cigarettes.
It's interesting. These things, they're little time capsules in their own way, aren't
Yeah, it
they?
has a lot of great articles which I'll be scanning. I want to share, and then our own the Hellenic Fund had a magazine, educational magazine, which I designed the covers, and this is my version of Cyprus as a young woman.
See the
hair.
The actual island of Cyprus is the hair.
Right
Right?
here. The fairies spell out Enosis because we're dreaming of
Union with Greece.
Union with Greece.
Right.
And it is the island of Aphrodite and her son Eros, Cupid, of course. That is what Cyprus is. So Cyprus is undisputably a Hellenic Greek island. It's part of the Greek world. It's always been one.
Yes.
And it's always been at the crossroads of many other civilizations as well.
Sure.
But doesn't make it any less Greek. You know, Egypt, Persia, the Israelites, the Armenians were there. Many peoples were there.
Crusaders were
Crusaders,
there. Yeah. So
Arabs,
you see when you go
Turks,
there, they have
Normans.
castles. They have castles and stuff. But you know what I found to be the most exciting thing when I was there, when I was by Paphos, there is this. I think it's called the temple.
So I haven't been there. George actually was there.
One
Went
Greek place
everywhere.
I've been to that
Yeah.
you haven't been to. Isn't that cool?
I always wanted to go, and I've been planning to bring my rock opera there. Anna and Vladimir, the Love the Rock the World. We spoke with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, many municipalities, and we were going to bring it this summer. And of course, COVID hit and things like that. Hopefully, in the future, we'll be able to take our story and music to Cyprus. But George was there last summer.
Yeah, well, fall. Yeah,
Fall.
last fall. And actually, it's great. You can go off season there. It's perfect. I mean, the weather is still very good. Actually, in the summer, it can be very hot there. So it's actually not a bad time to go. Like, let's say mid-October is pretty good. Actually, that's when a lot of Russians go. They go a little bit on the shoulder season. I didn't go there to be with Russians. I just went there because I wanted to see the country. But I find it interesting that this Cyprus kind of has slipped out of the main focal point, and it's just kind of like. It's a stalemate. Nothing's really happening there in terms of developments. There's always talk about, the bizonal federation, whatever. And then you have Erdogan, who basically says, okay, that's very nice. By the way, I want to drill in your territorial waters, and I'm going to do it whether you like it or not.
Well, you mentioned
that's
that
what's going on right now.
We were talking about that before. You're like, Billy, what do you remember from the Greek issues? I'm like, yes, Northern Epirus, Cyprus, and Macedonia.
Right.
But now all that is being overwhelmed by what's happening in the Aegean, which was always one of the other issues, the drilling of oil, or the gases, and the islands that the Turks claim, and Thrace, which is Evros, the river, and where the illegal immigrants were flooding Greece that Turkey allowed in, and is trying to invade it. So now that border of Greece, the Aegean islands, especially the northwestern islands of Chios, Samos, Lesbos, they're under attack, and the people there have woken up, and the Thracians of northeastern Greece. So that's where the focus has shifted, instead of Cyprus at the moment. And it's paradoxically, Cyprus is getting reinvaded again now with its the waters, that they're trying to drill for hydrocarbons, right?
Right, yeah, they're going for gas and oil and all that stuff.
And they're trying to go to Crete.
Yeah.
I mean, Erdogan literally claims half of Crete is Turkish, as it was done in the Ottoman Empire. So, in that sense, imagine in the year 2020, people saying this of an empire that was, it fell out and it was eliminated and went to the dustbin of history about 100 years ago. If we were to claim everything that the Greeks had conquered, we can be like India, or Italy or Egypt. You know,
Yeah,
that's how
that would
ludicrous
be-
this
imagine,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, and we actually have minorities there and people that still claim
Right.
and they live out as Greeks and Orthodox Christians, and in Syria to this day. But you know, normal civilized modern society doesn't invade peoples and claim empires again. And the Turks are doing that. They're starting a neo-Ottoman empire. And George had the unique opportunity to visit Cyprus. He visited Greece as well. You know, made the mainland, Thessaloniki, right?
I'm just getting warmed
Yeah.
up with Greece. This is Athens and Thessaloniki.
But you got to see the similarities in how
Sure,
people act.
absolutely.
You know, they're not like different group of
Yeah, no,
aliens that
Cypriots
live
are Greek. I mean,
Yeah.
when I was there, I mean, I remember when I went to the in Paphos, there was a museum. It was a very good museum. Just trying to remember the name, but I don't remember. But you see ancient Greek,
The
things
Paphos
that
Archaeological Museum.
possibly they were dug up there. This is ancient Greek stuff that was in Cyprus, on Cyprus. So what does that tell you? That means these people have been indigenous to that area for goodness knows how long. Of
course.
Practically all of
5,000,
recorded civilization. So
thousands of years.
the fact that Cyprus is thoroughly Greek in that sense makes perfect sense. Obviously, when the Ottomans invaded, they occupied it, just like they occupied all other Greek lands, right? And then instead of it reverting to Greece in during the Revolutionary period, it was still held by the Turks at that point. And then at that point, the British finally took it to themselves. They made it a colony. They actually, it was a British colony. And then came the big, then the Greeks there said, well, excuse me, we want to finish the job.
We're getting back all our lands back after we
Right.
won the Greek War of Independence.
Right.
And every few decades, we're reclaiming lands. We had the Balkan Wars that we won, and we got Macedonia back.
Right.
And Epirus. And then, by 1947, basically, after, during World War II and all that stuff, we got back to the Deccanese, the 12 islands from the Italians.
Right.
But Cyprus was still not part of Greece in the 70s.
Right.
And it wasn't fair because those people, and this is, I have like a little interesting connection to Cyprus, where I come from, my mother's side, Kalavrita. It's one of the towns of it. It's called Klitoria or Mazeka. Anyway, it's south to the border of Arcadia, and Arcadia is a province of the Peloponnese in the center, a very ancient province. And the language the Cypriots speak is a dialect called Arcadio-Cypriot. Mm-hmm. So that's where it comes from.
Okay,
from the Peloponnese. Right?
Well, do they have it where the letter sh exists? Would you know about that? Because that's what I was explaining to a Cypriot. Told me that's a unique sound that Cypriots make. They make a sh.
Well, yeah, the Cretans also have ch.
Okay. All right. So
most islanders have little dialect, linguistical versions of the language, and some of the other outer regions from the mainland, and that's what makes them unique. Doesn't make them any difference. Now, what they write is exactly Greek.
Right.
What
of
they
course,
sound like is, depends if they speak the Cypriot dialect. You're not gonna, we might not understand a lot of it.
Yeah, I
have
gotcha.
a lot of those pronunciations.
Well, it's like with Ukrainian, we have the same situation.
Yeah,
Right.
but now that they've more modified it to speak the mainland Greek dialect, you can understand everybody. But that's another issue. We're not experts on Cyprus dialects, but the language is Greek and it's a dialect. That's what it is.
So, I mean, when when I was in Cyprus, you still see a lot of, remnants of the British,
I'm sorry,
those
Lenny,
are British.
PJ, and Bill Turbot. Hi.
Hi,
And
folks.
Lenny says Arcadia. Yes, that's true. See, we
Arcadia.
know our stuff.
So basically, well, you know a lot of that stuff. I'm learning from you all the time. But I mean, when I was there, it's interesting. I mean, they drive on the left, just like the English do.
Yeah.
They still have the British electrical outlets and all that stuff. So that's still there, and of course, plenty of British tourists like to come there because it's a pretty close flight for them.
Well, in very brief, what happened is the British occupied that as a very strategical point of the Eastern Mediterranean. Whoever controls Cyprus or Crete or Sicily, those are the islands that kind of run the Mediterranean as bases. Malta is a little one, but Cyprus basically controls the Eastern Mediterranean. That means North Africa from that side.
Yeah.
The land, the Levantine coast of the Middle East, Palestine, Israel, Syria, Jordan, Turkey, all those things are the Eastern Mediterranean, and Turkey, of course, and Greece. So if you control this base, this island, you can check Egypt, you can check Israel, you can check Turkey, and then you can check
Lebanon, and all
the
that,
Soviet
yeah.
Union back in the day. That's
Well, yeah,
one of
you
the
were
reasons
within
that they don't want-
you had enough. There was a lot. There's
They
a
had
lot of
influence
places
in the Middle East.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
There was a lot of places where you could, where you could position yourself. And I'll never forget how this one. I was watching this one documentary where they had some Turkish either professor or whatever. They're like, and so, he was talking about how the Turks were concerned about the Greek plan for Enosis, and he's like, and Cyprus was like a knife thrust into Turkey's belly. It was like,
to the Ottomans and then to the Turks, they're the state that took after the successor state of the Ottoman Empire, modern Turkey. Cyprus to them was their destiny. They wanted to take back as many of the Greek islands, which to them is Turkish islands.
They're still working on it. They're still working on it,
and that's
today.
what they're doing right now. And now they discovered, and they already not that they discovered. We discovered now all these oil that's there and energy that's under minerals under the water. But back then the Turks had a plan that eventually, they're going to manipulate the international laws that had to do with how much land you can take from the continental shelf, because we are two countries that are both in NATO, Greece and Turkey, that is, and they both share continental shelves, which is important for these kind of things when you have islands. Our islands go all the way to the edge of Turkey. So the Turks were always upset that they don't have the islands, and then that means they don't have a saying in the sea there, which is ludicrous because that is the Greek Sea, that's the Aegean Sea, and they were the ones that invaded constantly and started taking over those places, and then taking over the civilizations and the culture and all the archaeological artifacts and places in Asia Minor, and making it Turkish, and then claiming that they were there, the original inhabitants. I mean, Ozal in the 80s, one of the prime ministers, wrote a book that everything was Turkish, and they even went to the moon.
Yeah. They photoshopped out the American flag, the Turkish flag, right?
But as ludicrous as they are, they have the second largest standing army of NATO.
Yeah, I don't know the numbers, but
which means there's like about 600,000 Turkish soldiers that are there permanently. That's like as many as America has, and we're 300 million people. That's a big power, and they don't do nothing else but plan on how to take over people.
Well, when you go, it's interesting.
I'm not laughing, but it's funny, but it's sad.
Yeah, of course. I mean, when you go to the occupied part, there's a lot of military installations there.
So what happened when you went to the occupied part? You passed the green zone.
Well, yeah, it's checkpoint. They make it very easy because it's a tourist thing and everything else. But I went there, and like the first thing you notice is like a lot of counterfeit stuff for sale, and everything else, and then you notice that infrastructure is poor, the roads are in disrepair, and then the most important thing you notice is of course they need your tourist money very badly, and I gave as little of it as possible. I was trying to,
but it's
I just wanted
weird.
to see what it was like.
It's not a legally recognized state; it's an occupied.
Yeah, you can't have like a Burger King there.
So how do you want tourism from something that's not a legal entity?
You can't even fly. You can't even fly from any other country there. You can only fly there from Turkey, basically. And if you actually fly into Ercan Airport with and the free part of Cyprus won't let you in.
What's the airport called?
Ercan.
Ercan,
yeah.
Okay.
They named it after one of their pilots who died during their invasion of the island of the country. But anyway, bottom line is that it's they're there for strategic reasons. Their military is all over the place over there, and if you take pictures of them, they warn you, do not take. They have those little red signs, and everything about.
So you notice a lot of military bases.
A lot of military stuff going on there, and actually it's pretty intimidating. I remember there was once a golden face of Ataturk with no eye, with hollow eyes, and it was like he looked like like a demon.
Wow,
it was scary. It was big, it was on a thing.
Ataturk is everywhere in Turkey,
and they do these things to intimidate you. They have statues. I didn't see these. I was told they have statues where there's like right by the checkpoint where there is a Turkish soldier like he's attacking. When I was in the village Pila, which is inside the buffer zone, you could see their checkpoint is up on a hill, and they have like a military checkpoint, and they have this big cutout. It looks like it's actually a person, but when you take close look at it, it's not. And it's like a shadow of a soldier, to make it look like he's big and he's ready to shoot you.
So usually when you cross over into another nation's borders, you have armed security and army, but you don't feel threatened. You feel like you're passing to somebody else's country. They're showing you they're bullies.
Yeah, they're basically trying to imply, and before it was
don't
worse.
Mess with us, we're coming for you.
And it was before it was worse. They would have signs like Northern Cyprus forever.
Yeah.
They still have plenty of it. When you get in there's always Ataturk all over the place. Their flags are all over the place.
What's Hellenic saying? Hellenic, PJ, you're saying for centuries Germans have been seeking control of Mid-East oil through Turkey. And the Brits do real estate there. Yes, of course. The
Oh,
French,
big time,
the
yeah.
British, and the
it's
Germans.
illegal, by the way, to own real estate there.
Yeah.
If it's discovered that you own real estate in the occupied part, you can get taken to court.
Yeah. So you saw some
yeah.
of the churches and they're
Well, I didn't.
closed?
Unfortunately,
No.
I didn't get to see any churches. I really spent very little time there. But
Okay.
I basically, I went to Kyrenia, which is what the Turks basically did was when they did this whole invasion in 1974, they thought it out very carefully. And this is where it gets interesting. They took over, 40%. They took over the most. Obviously, it was accessible to them because it was from the north that they came, right? But
Yes.
what the most important thing was they took 80% of the country's economy over.
Yes,
at that time.
back then
At
was
that
the
time.
tourist sector was in the north. It was
Right,
beautiful
Kyrenia
part.
and
Famagusta.
Famagusta and whatchamacallit, Rizocarpazzo, the little pointy part, right? So they took that over, and especially Famagusta, I think that's where they had the most. They had Varosha and everything, all those
Ancient
areas,
sites too.
right?
there.
And a lot of stuff. But that was a major tourist center. A lot of movie stars would go there. It was like a really big place, and it was 80% of the economy. They also had a lot of farms there and everything else. What happened is that they didn't know how to manage that stuff. Obviously they were under sanctions, so they were limited as well, but they didn't know how to manage any of that stuff, and it was a mess. And then with time, what happened was that the Greek Cypriots were able to actually pump up the unoccupied
Yes.
part, and now it's like an economic powerhouse compared to the occupied part. It's
So
like
you
can't
saw the
compare those
difference.
two areas.
It's like
Absolutely.
Mad Max zone.
Absolutely,
Of,
close
the
to
north.
that. Close to that. Yes, it was. Obviously they try very. Turkey pumps loads of money into there because
Yes,
they need
billions.
to. They need to have it look presentable for touristy reasons, right? But you always feel like it's an imitation. Like the restaurants are not great and everything else. So you could see it's like
You're not gonna get your.
it's kind of like a
Turkish
knockoff.
kebabs worth,
Yeah,
right?
it's like a knockoff, and that's what some people go there for. They go there for the cheapness of it, and it's not really even that cheap. So anyway.
we're not touching on this, but yes, Hellenic, the Turk was good buddies with another great friend
Oh
of
yes,
genocide,
absolutely,
Lenin, of
absolutely,
course.
Eleni. Thank you for pointing that out. That's a
you're
very
very
important thing. I think that's one very critical thing that we need to remember too when we're talking about Russian-Greek relations is that the Soviet government did a 180. It basically whoever was the ally was now the enemy and vice versa. And Ataturk, they were hoping that Ataturk would become a communist, and he
Yeah.
didn't. He kind of tried to outsmart everybody, and he didn't do a bad job
He
actually.
was a
in that
secular
sense.
nationalist.
Right, he didn't do a bad job, but he was playing different sides. And Lenin, of course, he threw his trust. And at the same time, you had people who fought against Lenin, the white emigres who were in Constantinople temporarily because they had to retreat. So it was like a very that definitely was a very good point to point that out.
Lenin and then Stalin betted on Tito in Yugoslavia, who
Right.
did become a communist, but he became his own autonomous communist.
Yeah, the non-aligned communists.
Non-aligned,
basically, right?
yeah.
The non-aligned.
But the Ataturk did actually, I think, probably favor the Germans more,
Yeah.
more or less than the Soviets. But he did
his old friends.
align with the Soviets. We have Dimitri Philippidis. Thank you for watching. John Siamas, Penny, Spets Geo.
Absolutely.
Hi everyone.
Very happy to have you join us.
So George had gone to the occupied part of Northern Cyprus, as we're talking right now, and then we had recapped a little bit about what's happening with the Hagia Sophia and the day of mourning, that's a remembrance that's going to happen tomorrow. So we seem to be going through this constantly. I remember as a kid, I'm going to be 45 July 30th. And I have a lecture upcoming on an introduction to Byzantium with AHEPA, which I belong. I'm the Director of Culture and Arts for the District of New York. And this is in St. Paul's in Hempstead, the Cassis chapter. This coming Thursday at 7 o'clock, which I'm going to be discussing. And Joe's going to help me film introduction
on Zoom.
on GoToMeet.
Oh, is it GoToMeet?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
it's on Zoom. All right, you'll see the link. There's an event there, so make
Introduction
sure you don't miss that.
to Byzantium, which everything is going to be in love letters here. You can see it on my wall.
You don't have to go there. You don't have to point parking. You can just
No.
watch it from home.
But it seems like when I was growing up, and I was involved with all these demonstrations for Cyprus, for North Cyprus, for Macedonia, and especially Cyprus, because that's a realistic issue. It's a land that was actually occupied. People were raped, killed.
Absolutely.
Hundreds of thousands
Yes.
had to flee their homeland, this little island, and become refugees in England, in America, back in Greece, and other places. And they can never go home. They can never go back. And this is a current thing. It's not 1922 Zmina. It's not Pondos. This happened 50 years ago.
Yeah, it's a generation we can reach
Yeah.
out and touch.
I was
you know?
born in '75, like right after they invaded. I was born, and so were you. So growing up in the early '90s,
You didn't have to give my age away.
she's younger. He looks younger.
I am actually younger.
Yeah, you're a little younger. I'm your older.
But anyway.
Respect.
Always.
So growing up in the early '90s and all these demonstrations, we're fighting for justice for Cyprus, and now it's 50 years later. Nothing has happened. And the Turks.
Yeah.
Not nothing has happened, but the Turks are still doing the same thing. They are now
Yes, there's no change.
taking the identity of Cyprus and making it Turkish. They're taking the identity of every ancient civilization that's been in Asia Minor, Anatolia. That's where Turkey is located, and they're saying these are Turks, or these are our people. They're not Greeks. They're not Armenians. They're not Maronites. They're not whatever. Hittites. Everything is theirs. So Cyprus to them is I think it's a very important strategic island that they want. I mean, they're not gonna get, but we might get into war.
Well, let's hope that doesn't
yeah.
go that far. But I think. Why don't you just to cap it off, we'll talk about what some of the alternative.
Nobody wants war, and it's
plans-
probably not going to happen because there's going to be appeasement and there's going to be.
Well, that's the thing. Like, what's happening now? I mean, we have like this whole new energy deal that's being spun right now, and I mean, I don't know where this is kind of going in terms of making any kind of progress towards a solution of any kind.
The Turks made this illegal deal with Libya. So Turkey is up there, Cyprus is there, and then Egypt and Libya is there, and Greece is there, right? So through this little island of Castellorizo, which is the last island before Cyprus, it's far off. Cyprus is here, Castellorizo is here, and then it's the Aegean. They made an illegal treaty with this the separatist movement of Libya, which is the rebels that are fighting the government, the actual recognized government from the UN. And they said now, since we made a deal with this government, illegal government, because we're illegal as well, we bypass this island of Castellorizo, and now we can claim that we have common waters, territory, that we share, and then we can drill,
right.
and that's next to Cyprus,
Yeah,
and
John Siamas says Turkey wants to control the islands because the Aegean has some of the largest natural gas deposits in the world. I'll take your word for it. I didn't research it, but
that's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's exactly it, John. So, by doing this illegal maneuver that's not recognized by anybody, now they can say, "Oh, now we have borders with Libya. They're our friends, and we're going to be able to drill." And other countries, the French have their drilling ships, which actually we pay. Cyprus and Greece pays them, and that they work with Cyprus and Greece. And it's like, what are you doing? This is our. I mean, they're actually butting heads with even France, and other drilling ships. So. Why hasn't anything been done? They're actually moving ahead to do stuff in somebody else's sea, territorial waters. Country. That's the country. We're maritime nations. That means our nation, half of it is in the water. It doesn't matter if it's on the land or not. We have thousands of islands, 200 inhabited. This is the Treaty of Lausanne in 1993 that was signed, and that says these are the Greek borders. But something wasn't done with the Greek government because these traitorous deeds, we might want to say, from many governments that were not officialized. These are our 6 nautical miles from your land, that we can't do this or that. The Turks claim 12. The Turks claim a lot of things, but the Greeks never secured theirs internationally. We think they did, but I don't think they have.
Right.
And if you guys know any better, let us know. But this is the issue now. Greece made wrong bureaucratical steps in securing a lot of the maritime borders.
So Eleni's asking, what do you think? How can we disentangle Turk ties to the U.S.? Turk foreign policy today is largely determined by State Department and plugged in lobbies in the U.S. So give some insight, I guess, what's going on with Turkey, how they're able to influence the American government.
We talked a lot about this. In a nutshell, a lot of our fellow Greek Americans and Russian Americans and other friends from Greece always say, why doesn't America do more? Our lobby here sucks. They don't do anything, the Greek American lobby. The Turks spend billions of dollars and they do stuff right. I'm proud of them that they do their job. They do their job.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
If I was a Turk, I would get more out of life than being a Greek.
Well,
if you want to put it that way,
Yeah.
that's a joke. But listen, The Americans made their money in the oils back in the 1850s in this place called the Ottoman Empire in the Caucasus. The Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the Nobels. They have built a dynastic family relationship, America, State Department, whatever you want to call it, with the Ottoman Turks and their hires, the Turks.
Yeah.
You know, for over 150 years. You can't break that. With Greece, it's the idea of democracy. It's because there's a lot of Greek Americans that are in America. My ancestors came here 100 years ago. Other people came on the boat with Columbus. But that's not enough because we haven't used our money properly to help the motherland like Armenians and you know, other people do. So what the Turks do is with oil, they made these alliances. You know, they're not family alliances, but they're financial alliances.
Yeah.
So every government has to deal with the notion that we need the Turks. First of all, back in there was because the Soviet Union is going to take
the Cold
over.
War. The Cold War was a very key determinant of that. Absolutely, the NATO membership of Turkey. As a matter of fact, that's a very important point about Cyprus because the reason why the Nixon administration didn't stop the Turkish invasion was that it was basically considered to be a balance of power act with Turkey and Greece. So he said there's no American reason why Cyprus shouldn't be 1/3 Turkish because they felt that if they had interfered, they could push Turkey into the non-aligned movement or worse, into the Warsaw Pact, and then they would have had a major problem. And the Turks played that card very effectively during that time.
And what happened with Greece? Greece had different governments. We had probably as many as the Italians had, over 200 different governments in the last 200 years of our independence. The only stability we had was in some of the dictatorships and Venizelos regime. So aside from those eras, Greece was shifting governments every year. So it was always unstable. The Turks were not. So the Americans and the British, used them. And when eventually the Greeks got their act together, then this thing came with the junta. It was Papadopoulos was put by the State Department, and he came out to be good for Greece. A lot of people don't like to hear that, but for a few years he was actually good and patriotic, and they tried to get rid of him, and they brought the colonels, and that was the military junta that took over and destroyed Greece, and caused a lot of the problems. It's two different things, but we kind of mix them all in one. But that's another issue.
It's often kind of cast into one.
But the junta was bad, and the junta made this bad deal with Cyprus because the Cypriots wanted to join, and they jumped it prematurely. They didn't do it properly, or maybe it wasn't meant to be. It was probably backed by the powers to be that Greece has to screw this up intentionally. That's where the Turks can invade, and then the Greek forces on the island are going to said to stand down, and then this invasion is going to happen, and the island's going to be split. That's a theory, but from what I know personally and have studied throughout the years, it's Cyprus can never go back to Greece because the British need to hold it to control the Middle East,
and they still have
bases there. And when the British were leaving their empire, colonial ways behind, it was the America that was the next superpower to be that they passed the baton to. So you need to understand that America needs to be there. We can't say anything or do anything to stop that. So now, how do we make a difference? How can we make stuff, change? Well, first of all, people are a little too obsessed with voting for upper government in America, the presidents and all this stuff. You got to vote for local government to change from the bottom of people that are going to be for you and for your minority and for your ethnic group and what they can do to help you in your community, and then how you can affect those people to affect other people that affect foreign policy. They got to be educated. You're going to meet a lot of congressmen and assemblymen like we have throughout the years, and they don't know nothing. They're Americans. They don't care about to them Russia is still like Soviet. Greece is like a back.
We're fighting another Cold War now, but
we're fighting another Cold
unlike
War.
The last one, I don't think this one has much of a.
Russia is Orthodox. It's Christian. It's a different entity. To Greece, to them, is still like they believe in the gods. We have donkeys in one airport. You don't know how people are not educated, and this is something our people here have to promote education. By creating movies and documentaries and in the school system. You know how many millions the Turks pump into the New York school system? In high school, you do a Regents for social studies, and I have these. I'll show you next week. I'll have a copy. Their examples have to do with like Ottomans and Seljuk Turks in the New York school system. You're going to see why was the Ottoman Empire important, or something like that. Nothing to do with Romans and the Greeks that made
Right.
Western law, government, democracy, the buildings we live in. Examples about the Turks and Seljuk, these are like ridiculous things, but they're not, because they have a plan to propagate their history and their causes, and they're doing it, and they're actually invading, and nobody can do anything about it. Not Russia, not America, not unless everybody gets united. Not France, not Canada, not China. So these are the things you need to understand. Cyprus is very dear to all of us, to Christians, to Orthodox,
Absolutely, it's
to
got
people of the
beautiful
world.
churches there, monasteries. It's a very beautiful place. It's a very beautiful country, and I have to say it was very sad being in Kyrenia, because you kind of feel it's like, where did those people go? I mean, they were thrown out, and they can't return there. I mean, they can return there, but they're not.
They can't live there. They can't buy anything.
And not only
there.
that, but the whole footprint, the whole feeling of the place has changed. As
Imagine
a
going
result.
back, and you're going to be shedding tears, and then they're going to be
It's
looking at you
tough.
like, "Who are you?" Like, "This was my house," and you're like, "Oh yeah."
And there were a
Too
lot
bad.
of videos about that online, where you see people come back to their houses and they look and they ask. It's very tough for people.
I've been to all over Turkey, and I've seen that, and it's very sad. Hi, Tolik Sahinian, grassroots. Yes, we have to do grassroots campaigns, and the first thing you can do is boycott Turkish products and the Turkish airline. That's something that should be a no-brainer.
Right.
Boycott Turkish Airlines. I know the Hellenic American, HALC, ANCA, the Armenian or big organizations, the Greek ones, that HEPA, and others. Now the Catholic bishops, I hope they get involved. With the Greek Archdiocese, and we boycott, because you know what, the Turks can do whatever they want in their country. It's their business, right? Hagia Sophia is in Turkey technically. It's not in Greece. It's not in anybody else's business. But we don't have to do business with them, and that's what's going to hurt them, their pockets, because they're going to lose tourism. And guess what? Every country that's a maritime country that has islands and borders with the sea, especially the beautiful, Mediterranean and Aegean Sea, they need tourism to survive.
Oh, absolutely.
Wars don't give you money. They can fund you a little bit, but they're not doing too well with their wars in Syria and Libya, and a lot of Turks are dying, and Erdogan is trying to keep on making new problems so they can keep on hiring people to fight these wars, but their economy is crashing. So hurt them where it hurts, in their pocket, in their tourism. So there are codes. We'll find out more of products that you can stop buying that are made in Turkish. Unfortunately, it's going to hurt our Turkish friends that live there. But you know what? Unfortunately, if this happened, if it was Greece, the same thing
It's
would
a
be done
war,
to us.
essentially. It's a war,
It's a war.
essentially, yeah.
We're not saying anything about the Turkish people, about Muslims in general. This is something to do with the Turkish government specifically.
John's got a question for us. Is there any organization that has a list of Turkish products that we can post so we can boycott? Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, you start by looking at food. I don't know about organizations.
There
Maybe you can
are
give some
codes
insights,
in the products. We'll look them up. Definitely look up ahepa.org, ahepa.org, and they have the boycott information for Turkey. If you're Armenian, ANCA, and so forth. But I don't know. We have Armenian friends as well. Russians, please don't buy Turkish products. That's all you can do. Educate your friends. Tell them to look at our shows and informations here on Love Letters to Greece of how you also have to know what Byzantium was to understand why these things are happening, and to know your history. 1100 years the Greeks ruled the world, but they had a mystical Christian civilization that now has become twisted, and it has become something that they're representing wrong. Like the academia, and Byzantium was something beautiful that brought Western civilization forth and brought the ancient ideals of the Greeks with Christianity, and now the Turks have taken that over, and they're twisting it, and so are a lot of academic schools and entities in the world. Because Greece is not doing their job. They're the hires. To be a Byzantine, you could be a Russian, you could be a Serbian, you could be an Armenian, you could be an Ethiopian, an Italian, you could be anybody that was Christian in part of the world. But the nuclei was, Greek. That's something
absolutely.
we can't deny. Somehow we feel embarrassed, or it's like a racist thing to say the empire was Greek. But you know what? That's the only way you can explain it now. It was Roman. That's another issue. But in the DNA of the Byzantine Empire, it was a Greek empire, and it was a multicultural Christian Greek empire. That's what's very important. It was for everyone, and we wanna promote that, and we need to be not afraid of our Christian roots as well, and that's something of peace that we need in the world. We need love, and we need to continue Christ's examples of that.
Absolutely.
So don't hate people, but just do the right thing. If you need to do something, boycott. That's all you can do.
Well, and again, educate and boycott, that's a great way to start. Nobody's forcing, and these are relatively easy things to do as well. I mean, you just apply a little effort. So anyway,
that's it for now.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We had quite a lot of people watching us live, and we always welcome your questions.
Remember, every day new things are happening. Like yesterday, we were ready to go to war in Greece. Countries on high alert. Then you hear news that, so
let's hope
things
that's
constantly
the case,
change. Let's hope nothing gets for the worst. People have a good summer, COVID-free summer.
Yes.
And they're healthy and they can get back to their lives soon.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much for watching.
God bless
I'm Billy
you all.
Chrissochos.
George Selinsky.
We'll see you next week.
You got it.